I came into the industry as a problem solver, as like an entrepreneur, right? We have a bug to solve problems, right? So when I looked at the industry is a status quo right now, right? It doesn't matter where we go, status quo is not easy to change because they're just comfortable. That's what they know, right? That's how it's been done, right? But that doesn't mean the new way of doing it, right? Is that's not what they should learn, right? So I think it's about relearning, unlearning, and what we call it, right? Like, that industry really has to look at it that, hey, how are they building it? How they can build it better.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Activating Curiosity. I am Ryan Ware, and today I have with me Ali Salman from Edmonton, up in the great white north of Alberta, Canada. So, Ali, how are you doing?
I'm doing amazing, Ryan, and it's great to be joining you this morning from all the way from Ohio, right? So,
yeah, well, it's snowing here, so I don't know what it's doing in Edmonton, but I have a guess.
You got it right. Your guess is pretty close by. And that's why I have this picture behind me. It reminds me that, hey, I have to go somewhere warmer. So
Right. Yeah. Well, you snowbirds, right? You got to get down into the States. So, well, I'm looking forward to the conversation because you came across my LinkedIn feed and started seeing you post about things that were very relatable to some of my passion, and I know you'll get into this. So before we dive into the episode, I know you're involved in a lot of different businesses. So just tell a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into activating curiosity.
So Ryan, my wife told me once that I'm unemployable. A kind of a seasoned serial entrepreneur, uh, came to Canada around 20 years ago, dropped out of a university because family comes from a business world, really got into businesses, right? Did everything from running restaurants to basically running a consulting firm. And then once throughout my experiences as of today, I'm involved in private equity, cross-border mergers and acquisitions, and foreign direct investment mandates, predominantly in Canada, Dubai, and India. But Ryan, the most thing I'm excited about, which wakes me up, I think that is more good work. But like what really excites me is my involvement with Workspace Modular. I lead that company. It's a modular manufacturing, prefab and modular manufacturing company, and we are based right outside of Edmonton, an industrial area in Alberta, and predominantly serve Western Canada. Hopefully, we serve across Canada, but right now, mostly centered on Western Canada, right? And that's what consumes me day to day. A husband, dad, right? Try to get some workouts, but I don't think so. It's with busy life. It's tough. It's tough, right?
Yeah. Well, you'll find the time. I mean,
Yeah.
the dad part. Well, somebody once told me, "Hey, the story about someone complaining about their lawn, and they're like, hey, don't worry about your lawn. You're growing kids." Um, so you'll find the time, and I appreciate you sharing the story. And I know, the Workspace modular is what sort of caught my eye. But so many other fascinating parts of who you are and those things, like you said, that kind of wake you up in the morning and drive, you know, that intrinsic motivation that you're having of like, hey, I might be unemployable. That does not make me useless, right? Like
Yes.
I have something that I'm passionate about, and you're noticing it. So getting into the episode here a little more, then I always like to start with the first question being around, all right, Ali, something caught your eye and you said, that is a problem we're solving.
Yeah.
What was that?
So, Ryan, think about when we go back in history. There has been times in history, fundamentally, it changed the pace of progression and growth as humans, right? That
Hmm.
made a big impact. First time agriculture became industrialized, right? People using hands and their tractors came in, right? First time computer went from like being in 5 rooms to like this small chip, right? Because chips got so
Right.
some discoveries are basically transformational for humans, right,
Hmm.
across the world, irrespective of country, region, right? And if we really look at the practice and the construction method of prefab and modular, right? Let that be modular being like, cement slabs, let that
Hmm.
be mass timber, let that be volumetric. Just the concept of doing construction in a prefab in a modular way, I believe is transformative to the infrastructure side, right?
Hmm.
Um, because this approach it's already applied, but it's not just mainstream yet. It has its own struggles, it has its own challenges. But uh, uh, we are sitting in our offices and homes, and our homes are heated and hot water flows. It took
Yeah.
years and years and years to get there. So I think modular and prefab is basically solving a huge problem in the world, which is infrastructure. We don't have enough infrastructure, education, health, you say basically bridges and roads and all of that kind of things,
Hmm.
right? Uh, so it has this very promising uh, angle to it that's pretty much excites me the most. Uh, we mostly do panelized and volumetric, but if you
Hmm.
look at a lot of industrial, commercial, like it's going like big prefab, like cement and like so many different kind of building materials are getting used. But just this whole concept of prefab and modular being a huge problem solver, that genuinely excites me, because if we can solve infrastructure problems, we can solve health problems, we
Yeah.
can solve education problems, we can solve homelessness problems, which is it's a huge in the urban centers across North America, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think that's what sparked my curiosity, led me to this rabbit hole of prefab and modular, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I think we're just getting started, right? I
Hmm.
genuinely believe this whole movement. It's a very new thing for a lot of folks. Uh, and I think industry has been very traditional.
Hmm.
Industry was, let's say, they were like doing it the old way, but the industry understands it, that if they can really change and like we talked about robotics, we talked about like automation.
Hmm.
uh, Imagine how one car plant can pump out thousands of cars. Why
Right.
can't a housing plant cannot pump out hundreds of thousands of houses? And I think that's where we are going. Let that be houses, let that be modules for construction, hospitals, schools, right?
Hmm. Yeah. So your background is not from the industry, and that's I think what made it unique because you saw a problem where it not only impacts the industry, the AEC industry, right? Like infrastructure impacts every single person on the face of the planet somehow, some way. And you talked about like a lot of the challenges I know we have here in the States and also there in Canada. With the housing, there's just not a supply line to fill. If you want to lower and make things more affordable, there you have to increase the supply. It's just basic economics 101. But we haven't been able to achieve that, I think, for a lot of reasons over the years, be it people willing to invest into it. A lot of times it falls into there is not the labor force to do the work, let alone those willing to develop new housing. The thing that really drove post World War II for a lot of us was, the housing boom, and everyone could afford it. Well, the supply was cranked up, but there was a major change that shifted in that time frame of how we were building as well. We were still doing some stick building and things, but the material was shifted.
Yeah.
So you hit on some things that I think are very intriguing. Is that yes, there is an old way of doing it, but situations have now shifted to where we have to reevaluate how we're building. So you spotted it as an individual that said, this isn't just one person being impacted, it's much larger. Something that has always struck me within our industry is, people are always like, oh, the industry's slow to change. You got an outside perspective here. Is there an obstacle and barriers for other people to even recognize these solutions, these methods of construction as a viable option for them as well?
So Ryan, I came into the industry as a problem solver, as like an entrepreneur, right? We have a bug to solve problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked at the industry, I think you hit the nail right there. That industry is a status quo right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? Doesn't matter where we go, status quo is not easy to change because they're just comfortable. That's what they know, right? That's how
Right.
it's been done, right? um, but that doesn't mean the new way of doing it, right? Is that's not what they should learn, right? So I think that it's about relearning, unlearning, and what we call it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that industry really has to look at it that, hey, how are they building it? How they can build it better, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a simple example, right? We talk about different demographics across the world get impacted. We have all seen this infamous video of China assembling a hospital in days.
Mm-hmm.
So see,
Yeah.
okay, so see, when the necessity hits, we do it.
Right.
But then we get
Right.
comfortable and we go back to status quo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what my perspective was, that no, why are we keep going back to status quo and go to traditional methods, right? We need infrastructure. Um, Recently, like, when we just look at densification of the cities, it's unsustainable for the cities to keep growing like this.
Right.
I mean, taxes are crazy. So they need density. Now, how are you going to build in that city, right? You cannot really go and build site built. It just doesn't make sense, right? You disrupt the whole neighborhood, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so when we talk about aging demographics, every day just in Canada, 1,000 people become seniors. They
Mm.
want to live close to their families. They want to live like, in mother-in-law suite, or like, in additional small prefab. So my point is that there is niche market needs which prefab and modular can solve. Um, and that's where the opportunity is, and that's what traditional industry has to really come out of this trailer mindset and say,
Right.
hey, we can solve big problems here, right? And I think it's more, I genuinely believe, Ryan, that this industry needs more disruptors and entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, who can really come and solve these problems and create solutions around it. Because it's like saying that we have a Lego. We always say we have a Lego in place. So then what can we build with that, right? Okay, what
Mm-hmm.
kind of problems we can solve with it, right? And I think that's where uh, it kind of opened up like, a door for me to really see that this is upside in this whole in this whole industry. And then I also believe that uh, across the world, we have the playbook which already exists, right? We
Right.
go in Europe, playbook exists, right? So you cannot tell me that, Ali, this cannot be done, right? That's BS, right?
Right.
You don't want to do it because you're just too comfortable doing the way you know how it's done, right? Uh, Most modular manufacturers today are technically not an assembly line
Mm-hmm.
still, right?
Right.
Because the way we built it, right, is still, again, even industry has an excellent solution, but industry itself needs to transform a bit. And that's where I think we are headed, where repeatable panelized walls are getting pumped out by robots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your robots are not calling in sick. They are on time. They are on schedule. Uh, there's a whole other debate about how many people will lose their jobs. But I think we also have to
Right.
talk about how many new jobs will be created, right?
Yeah.
So
The new labor
if we,
force. Yeah.
100%. So if we, I think, train our labor force to really be the future labor force, right? And how we can build sustainable, fast, and affordable, which market can definitely compete with the site built, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I think this is where, like, the opportunity exists in the marketplace, right? Because as we talk about different market segments, a lot talk about schools.
Right.
Every region in the urban center, when it's not sustainable for them to keep building new schools. A lot of them do modular extensions to existing schools because
Hmm.
when the neighborhood matures up, they can take out those extensions because the kids move out of the neighborhood. And that's what the densification idea is, that cities really cannot afford uh, if they keep building in a traditional way. And then when we talk about rural areas, right?
Hmm.
Rural
Yeah.
areas, you cannot drive five framers middle of nowhere, right? Feed them and then say, hey, can you put up this stick? And right now with minus 10 or minus 15 weather. So I think across the board, there are solutions. If someone comes into this industry with solutions, either from inside or outside, I think there's a lot of money on the table and there is a lot of opportunity on the table because that's where I genuinely believe that's where this industry is standing as well.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up a lot of great points, and I want to back up because I want to start with this area of, that resistance. It's the human mind doesn't like new things. Like it's built to run from those things. And I love that you said relearn, because that's an area, being a coach and change management coach and focusing in that area, like understanding how we think about it as individuals, but also as other humans, to see it like, hey, this isn't about making what you're doing irrelevant. We're not saying that you're wrong. We're not saying that it was ever wrong. It's just the situation that we find ourselves in today, the need for greater supply, the need, as you said, for rural areas where people may not want to live and there is no contractor, there is no subcontractor pull. Like those humans still need an answer, like need something to address it. And it can't be, you know, an enormous cost to give them what they need from a necessity standpoint. So from an industry side, we have an opportunity to go address a lot of those by reframing how we think about these solutions. And I would say that, prefab it's not a new thing. I'm almost 50, but like we've been talking about it a long time. I worked at a precast plant before going to architecture school, and it was there my whole life. I was watching them ship out beams and panels as I'm growing up. I'm like, this is fascinating. Like they're building this in a plant and shipping it. So it is a mindset shift in from all aspects. I don't know how you think about this, but the contractors themselves, yes, we need to provide them, a better way to work when they're out working, because that will make it more attractive and getting people attracted into the industry. Like they don't want to be freezing. They don't want to have lunch on a curb. They don't want to go to the bathroom in a porta john. From a construction site standpoint, as well as those educational pieces of like, I remember the trailers sitting on the site at high school, and some classes were in those, and it didn't feel right. Well, today's solutions are far more advanced and attractive. That doesn't say like, hey, you're a second citizen here. It just says we see the need and we're giving you another way to learn. So I know I'm saying a lot there, but it's a mindset, right? Like
Mindset.
there's
Yes.
there's some mindset shift. So with those obstacles, like you don't come from the industry, so I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Like when those obstacles are sort of being thrown in, how are you, staying in that conversation, helping them see the opportunity to relearn, as you just said?
I think that's an excellent point, right? I think uh, we really need to understand that our obstacles are not uh, they are not challenges; they are opportunities.
Hmm.
Actually, this is just a mindset shift there, right? Right? Like I'll give you one example. When you built it, even in today, when you built it inside a factory, you actually built a better product. Period.
Hmm.
Right? You're not out there standing on a ladder, So I think there's a lot of weather, a lot of other logistics, right? Um, the way industry does Q&A, right? And how we
Hmm.
communicate it to the end user. Often people will talk, GCs or developers will say, I was trying to call my manufacturer, like, I don't know which stage my building is at. Is the rough and has been done, or is it like, are you finishing interior, or are you doing flooring, right? Uh, I see a tremendous opportunity because, homes today, um, are still sold to humans. Humans we are all emotional buyers, right? Okay.
Right.
So when we go back in how industry thinks, right? Still over 90% of the factories have Q&A in a traditional paper format, right?
Right.
Uh, Even they have a 4 people bloated design teams. They are not using AI, right? It's
Right.
like, I always think, I'm not saying I'm an Elon and I come to X and I take over and I say I'm going to fire, like, half of the factory. I'm not trying to say that, but actually that's what factories are today. That's what the industry is, right? They're not realizing that we have tremendous opportunity to solve these challenges, turn it into challenges, turn it into opportunities, because that's what market wants, right?
Right.
So I think when you're building a structure, a home for someone in a factory, now imagine that, like, in real time, the end user, Sally, she has her dreams. That's her nest for life. She
Hmm.
has her dreams associated with it, right? You're communicating through a proper tool, proper, like, project management, where they basically, she can see exactly what's happening with her structure, right? So there's a hell lot of opportunity inside the industry, where, because industry does it in a certain way. And the answer I always got, hey, Ali, we have been doing it for 30 years. It works. Don't come and fix it like this.
Right.
And and
Right.
and, and I'm like, fine, right? Okay. But if I can tell you, you are becoming faster, you're basically creating less headache for yourself, right?
Hmm.
So I think uh project management to communication to, like, how the whole flow runs, right? There's a science and math behind it,
Right.
right? And technology helps us do that. So I think that's where because the industry insight says, see, the biggest challenge is there is a huge deficit of human capital, who are experienced. So that's problem.
Right.
When you go to operations VP or a manager or someone who's been doing it for past 20, 30 years, they say, hey, this works. That's how we do it, and it has always worked for us, right? So that's where the challenge comes in, Ryan, and that's where the opportunity comes in the industry
Right.
for. So when I saw it and I said, you know what? Why are we not running 2 ships? Why are we not building the similar product?
Hmm.
One car plant doesn't pumps out 50 different models. They focus on 10 specific models so they can scale, right? So I think that's where the opportunity is. When you come in as an outsider, you look at status quo and you say, no, comparatively, healthcare is here. Uh, you know, other sectors are here, but why prefab is operating at this technology level, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's how you start talking to the stakeholders, from the guy who is doing craning to the guy who is doing piles of foundation, to someone, like, who is doing even trusses as a roof components, right? How we can use technology, how we can get better. uh,
Hmm.
so so when we go and sell our product, I think one of the interesting thing is, industry says that, uh, we are not growing, right? We are not growing as we should.
Right.
I personally say, you have not given a market enough compelling reason that they come and knocking at your door. This is a difference in approach. We don't have to keep saying that why are we not growing. I think
Right.
we really have to understand that what are the solutions. Like, if you have a better product out there, Ryan, you don't need to sell it. I think industry needs to create a better product. I think a lot of companies are doing it. We are all in different journeys. There is amazing companies out of US who are working on, like, repeatable, scalable models, right? But but I think we are not, like, no one has been able to nail it down, and that's where the opportunity exists. And that's why we see a lot of talent coming in from outside, because they see an opportunity in prefab and modular, that
Right.
they are also not thinking from a status quo perspective, right? And I think that creates the room. to really solve problems in the industry, right? And I think I'm a genuine believer that when I sit across the table, uh, I have massive respect for people who have been on the ground and doing it for last 20, 30 years, right?
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think at the same time, that respect also goes the other way. That, if someone is saying that use technology and use AI uh, on how we can, let's say, optimize our floor time, right? That's where the opportunities exist to improve, right? So I think
Yeah.
uh, uh, both the status quo and the new way of doing it, right, has to be merged to find this middle ground, right? Because see, if we don't solve it or we don't solve it, we are losing on an opportunity to really grow this industry. I think the industry deserves to be grown at 3 to 4x of what the current CAGR is in
Right.
North America. I think we can genuinely get to 25 to 30% of the market, right? There's an opportunity there, but we just have to think like a problem solvers. We don't have to blame outsiders and say, hey, why they are not buying prefab and modular. Well, we may not have the right product market fit yet as an industry
Right.
where market can tell you, hey, I'm going to build 80% of the houses prefab and modular because it just doesn't make sense for me to build it like, site build, because what you have came up with a tractor when I was using my hands.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. You said a lot of things that kind of, again, just spark the curiosity in me. And then I've come from this industry, but it's just thinking through, again, other ways of addressing the other humans who are feeling like, hey, you're trying to take something away from me. Um, so the status quo, I think a lot of people in the industry will hear status quo and they think like, well, you're just saying, I'm too old or I'm this, right? That everyone goes through their own iteration of what they heard.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, it's because one, we like to control things ourselves. We want to make the choice ourselves. And in this situation with these solutions, like that status quo means clarity because it's worked every time for 30 years. And there's a problem with all of that in the sense that it can work for 30 years, but the one time it doesn't, then what? Because situations have changed. And that is, NASA had problems with that to where there were signals that things weren't going to go well. But the minute the space shuttle didn't return, yeah, like it worked for 30 years ahead of that or 10 missions ahead of that. And that one time that it didn't, it cost, lives and a lot of reputation. So status quo, I look at it from a standpoint, it isn't wrong. Again, it's just we have to understand that clarity came because we've done it so many times. And as you said, it's like, I think what I'm hearing from you, and this is how I think too, is like there isn't a silver bullet to this. It's not an answer for everything, but it can start to answer enough things that it raises all levels. We're able to start addressing housing shortages and affordability and getting things into rural areas as well as other parts of cities. So, like you said, um, it is a critical problem to solve.
Yeah.
And you've said, hey, I'm getting involved into this, right?
I think status quo also exists on all levels, not just in private, like private sector, public sector as well.
Right.
Hey, look at the building codes and look at like how municipalities, like provinces, states operate in building codes. I think there's also a comfort level there that that's how we have done it. This is how
Right.
the codes work. We don't want to change it, right? I think there is also a status on that side as well. So private
Hmm.
sector also has that challenge, right? Uh, but there is a status quo within private sector as you talked about it. So I think on both sides, public and private both, right? But until it
Right.
gets disrupted, right? And I think, Ryan, what worries me is that when I look at a factory in China, they are moving at 15x the space.
Hmm.
They can build an electric car cheaper than Tesla. So that tells me that it's not that it's not doable. It's doable. but we really have to think outside of the box and overcome the status quo here,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because that's where the disruption will happen. Because if the builders and developers, manufacturers, this whole ecosystem doesn't realizes it, that they're going to build a local made solution in North America, I can see us like, our whole dollar store is 90% China. I don't mind saying like, I'm probably going to see like 90% of the homes are from China, right? Okay. And
Right.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we as an ecosystem will lose its ability to be a builder and a manufacturer. How a lot of manufacturing moved out of North America, and we talk about like digressing in politics and stuff like that, but
Hmm.
a lot of the politics about like bringing back manufacturing to US, to Canada. Canada is also like working majorly to have a locally done manufacturing, right? Let that be
Right.
building materials, let that be like prefab, more volumetric. So I think my genuine thing is that if you weren't going to solve it, someone else will solve it, and they're going to eat
Hmm.
the lunch. So get to it, work together, right? If the Ford, if like GM can be built in North America, right, specifically to state, I think this presents a tremendous opportunity for us to really build really amazing solutions which are North American made and catered to basically our own population. So I think um there is that. Now last thing I would say, that when it comes to changing status quo, uh, we also have to think that technology and AI is one of the biggest transformational things which has came up in the last 10,
Hmm.
like 15, you said 20 years. Internet came and changed the world, and now AI is on its verge, right? I really think that industry has to look at it, how it designs, how it
Hmm.
optimizes the floor, how it communicates with the stakeholders, right? And I think that's where the opportunity for improvement is, right? Because that's where the robotics will lead us, right?
Right.
Um, we talk about a lot of markets don't have the right labor, right? There's a genuine
Yeah.
shortage of labor,
Yeah.
or the labor is unsustainable. I mean, I'll talk about it. A Canadian government has recently announced, like, they want to build an Arctic infrastructure, right? They're going to build a new base. They'll have multiple, infrastructure, they really want to put it out there. Now, imagine you're going to fly 3, 4, 5,000 people in middle of nowhere, right? In Antarctic. And so that's where I think robotics can come in. That's where AI can come in, which can
Right.
converge. And we have already started to see factories implementing robotics, right? And that's where I think genuinely believe that uh, the intersection of really we are at solving this problem at a scalable level, and it could be the hybrid approach,
Hmm.
right? I think sometimes to disrupt status quo is not that you basically change, flip the whole script, right? I think it's
Right.
a 1 degree of change. Why don't we think like this? If builders are building it site built, right? Okay, instead of doing everything on site, now they're using panelized approach. I think that itself, if the industry moves from site to panelized, that's a huge win, right?
Hmm.
Because now you kind of got closer to the end goal, right? And then
Right.
eventually you get to more complete prefab. I think one of the biggest things is that in Canada and most of states as well, we don't send the wall systems interior finished, right? It cracks, it has other challenges, right? So those are the opportunities, right? Whoever solves those things will genuinely, right, can bring a solution to the market which is
Hmm.
scalable, right?
Yeah.
So I think I think using new techniques, using AI, using technology, right? These are some of the tools which can really help us solve these problems and take a product to the market which market genuinely gets excited about, right? I think
Hmm.
that's what also prefab we are I'm a big believer, right, about design, right? I think you're being an architect background, I always say that don't just keep building trailer, we can be so creative with the design. Why are we
Right.
not telling that story to the public, right? hey,
Right.
we can build pretty cool things, right? Okay, not with a crazy cost, right? Keeping the cost side low, but we can build some interesting designs out there. And I think that's what. And design is not just from exterior; it's like just a whole inside functionality side,
Hmm.
right? How does the flow works, right? And I think you said commented, right? How schools used to be like, kids felt like they're sitting in a trailers. Now today, if there's a lot of schools which are getting built modular, you cannot see the difference if it's modular with site
Right.
built, because they're built with an intention. If you're built with the right intention, that I don't want to create just like a trailer for someone to crash up there, a construction worker, because
Hmm.
that's how prefab and modular was born as well, right? So I think also our roots are also a problem, because we go back to those roots and say, hey, this is what we are known for. But yes, I mean, this is how we got started. But the future is so bright. We can build, uh, we talk about when Canada allowed in mass timber, they recently
Hmm.
allowed to add more floors. So I think we can genuinely build bigger, better infrastructure with
Right.
better designs. And we're getting there, right? It's just that sometimes I feel we're a little bit slow, but I think that's how entrepreneurs feel as well. That we want to solve this problem today or tomorrow. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is, to be fair, it is taking us a long time to get the acceptance. And we keep talking about mindset because it is so important with this. But I think you said something important. Like, the reality is, I guess I'm not a fan of the word disruption because I think a lot of people hear it as this is going to take more work and energy than I normally have, to where, that status quo and that thing that I've always known, your brain sits into a couple different systems, and that one is the one that moves fast. So you used the other word, which was opportunity. And it's, hey, you can, if you want control, you can make the choice to say that this has gotten me to this point, but in order to not be completely upended by someone else's decision, I can become an active participant in relearning, not not falling into the trap of the curse of knowledge. Like, the curse of knowledge is like, I've always known this, so therefore you walk in the room and think everybody knows it or whatever, and it's just, it's too valuable to let go into that area of curiosity of saying, okay, this is this is new. I've never delivered in this methodology before. um, Relearning about ourselves and that perception that we've had of what the word modular means versus kit aparts all the way through modular, as you're saying. Like, there's so many options with that kit aparts to assemblies to panelize to other types of solution. My personal feeling is the answer is every project's different, just as it's always been. But you need to change how you're asking that question at the beginning of how can I build this? And exploring those areas of opportunity to pull prefab in, like you're saying, to advance some of those solutions. You've also alluded to, and I know this is a challenge. I walked into a factory, well, I think it was like 2019 or whatever, and the first thing I noticed was a folder with handwritten notes sitting on the side, and I was like, "Well, what is that for?" And that's how we document how it's going through the factory. And I was like, "Yeah, that doesn't work for me." So there is this gap getting factories up to how much automation should it take, how standardized designs should it take. So how our minds work, but also that factory piece, because people have the perception of the trailer um, past and what they've always seen. And then over here on the other side, they have stories of Kater and why do more factories struggle? And we know this too. There's a cash flow challenge not only for traditional build, but there are cash flow challenges for factories, and because it takes a different approach. and how that cash is going to move through the project. You also alluded to technology gives more clarity to those who can't be in the factory to see how things are progressing. So I know there's a lot of those tools that are out there. Um, you know, I guess that leads me to this question then, and I think you started to address this too, of like, you see an opportunity, you're looking at it from the outside, you're saying, I see these barriers. I know maybe we're moving slow, but it's too important to not address. And you said before, hey, if we don't address it, someone else will. So beyond that, someone else even addressing it, like, what is it costing us right now by not having either party really addressing it? Like,
Yeah.
what do you see as someone from that outside of what it is costing us?
What's it's costing us, right? I think that's a great example. We go back to Ryan. Vacuums existed. Vacuums have existed for like years, right? Decades, I would say.
Right.
But interesting thing has happened, right? When the Dyson came and they looked at vacuums and really changed the design and functionality and created a multi-billion-dollar company out of it. I think that's how the industry has to think. I'm not saying that whatever they're doing, it's working, but it's working at this level. Why don't build a product which takes it here?
Hmm.
So when you talk about like opportunity, and that's what I think the traditional industry we have to think like this: that can we build a better product out there for our clients,
Right.
right? Because generally industry says that why like why no one is like why we are unable to scale, right? But I think let's reverse that approach and take a product first approach, right? A lot of technology companies do that, right? Let's just build something that people just use, they cannot live without, right?
Hmm.
So I think Dyson did that to vacuums, that really like changed the way vacuums were seen, and people paid like three times the price for that vacuum for Dyson.
Right.
So I think so. That is that opportunity, but okay, because often industry thinks that what, well, we're going to improve the product. It's cost prohibitive. I get it. It's cost prohibitive. Then why don't we build a better product which with market genuinely pays for, right?
Right.
Um, Now on the flip side of it too, like when we talk about like problem solving, as you talk as you like technology is the piece, like AI is the piece, but I will also go back and I would say that how we address our stakeholders, right?
Right.
Because I think they are the people who will, like, if Sally buys a home from Modular Home and she has an excellent experience, she will go and tell 10 people out there, right? So I think we really have to talk to stakeholders, not just B2C, B2B side as well, like, B2B side, oil and gas companies, mining companies, right? So I think we really need to address our stakeholders. And what you said is that's where the opportunity is, that how we communicate with like how in industry communicates with the external stakeholders, right?
Hmm.
Who are also important part of solving this big problem and like creating this opportunity, right? So
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, I think the vacuum discussion is an important one because it makes us sort of reframe. And I know productization has been a big talk, right? Like
yeah,
with industrialized construction and this convergence that's happening, we've we've been talking about how can we get the solutions for construction to get through a factory, right? From design and through factory. So we talk about direct, digital manufacturing, or design for fabrication, design for manufacturing as well. So all of these things, like we've been talking about it for a long time. And as an entrepreneur, you said, like, doesn't feel like it's moving very fast. For me, it's interesting because you did not come from this industry.
yeah,
And for you to dive into it, look at the problem and see it from a different perspective gives us that moment of pause where, for those of us that are in it, that are comfortable, like, what if we did reevaluate it? Like, what would have to be different? All of those things, start asking different questions. And I know that it is a very low margin business for architects, engineers, for contractors. And those new things, well, they look like risk. So bringing them into into a project when, as you said, the stakeholder sitting there, you want to get feedback. Well, I think a lot of the slowness happens because we try it once and it didn't go the way the traditional went the last time. So we have that data point and we go against that. Well, the reality is like that's not, the variables aren't the same. So you can't look at it from that standpoint. The first time isn't the benchmark that you want your stakeholder to feel. So you're going to find in the first time that you're trying some of these things that you've got to have a stakeholder that understands that and you're communicating it. You're driving clarity through communications, like you said, where they can see what's going on the factory floor, that communication is happening more directly between all the parties. And because where people are coming into the project is going to be different timing. It's all about clarity. And that clarity is communication, but it's also communication from the start. Like, hey, you have never done this before, so don't expect it to be your best try. So you have an opportunity that each of these individuals that are coming in to work alongside with you or taking on any technology, anything in this convergence of like, have the empathy. And I know this again, that it is risky, feels risky, it feels new, it will feel slower than it has before because you are in a different system of your cognitive state of like, oh, well, I've never seen it, so I'm not sure what the next move is. Well, clarity comes with each step forward. It doesn't come by knowing exactly how it's going to go when you've never done that. So when you brought up the stakeholder, I think it's just fair that individuals who are trying it for the first time, like I always say it, you've got to be empathetic to it. But we are human, so we defend. We go into defensive mode of, again, I'm going to control what I'm going to control. And by holding on to whatever you're holding on to and control, that is actually taking it off the rails. That's actually causing a lot of the friction that is happening, within the project team or within the project. So there is a coaching mindset, I think, that comes along with a lot of this change that might be happening not only in the factory, but in a construction team and a design team and for the stakeholders. So I'm appreciative that you're having these types of conversations out there. I'd love to see it go faster, not only for yourself, but I think for the industry, because I think we would be able to address a lot more problems that other humans are facing. And yeah, if we want to control it, we need to get more curious and start
Yes.
having more conversations like you're having, right?
I would always say this thing that I think we genuinely have to believe one thing, that if we won't going to improve, right, someone will eat your lunch. And I think if that doesn't
Yeah.
motivate you, uh, and that's how the business world works. So I think one of the things that I always tell the folks in my industry that we don't have to change it in one day. We have
Right.
to make it's like, it's 1 degree change, right? And over a year, if you have improved by 10%, like Dyson took a product and improved it by 20%. Product improved the design, improved the suction power, improved the functionality, and they became a multi-billion dollar industry, right? They
Hmm.
raised the game. That's how the industry has to think, that what, we are here. We don't have to completely flip the script, right? But how can we get 5% better? How can
Right.
we get 10% better? I think there's just perspective of getting better and being proactive than being reactive, right?
Hmm.
I can tell you how many times industry has a lessons learned, and they talk to the whole team across the company and say, hey, this is how it's got screwed up last time. What did we learn? How can we improve it? Let's document it. Let's better track it. Right? And I think if the whole ecosystem comes together, right, and really de-simplify it. So what do I mean by that? I think as modular and prefab industry, I think we have to productize our offerings. We cannot just be everything for everyone. I think
Right.
that's also a wrong approach. If let's say if hospitals are not getting built to an extent where you can go penetrate that market, then maybe that is a far-fetched like an idea versus, let's say, homes, or simple thing is, I would say that, like, additional ADUs. ADUs is a product which is should be 100% prefab and modular, because it just the solution fits the market need there, right? So I think
Right.
as an industry, we really have to also think about productizing ourselves and bringing a solution to the client. Because I believe, Ryan, I'm a little bit opposite thinker there, that instead of asking customer what do you want, tell them and give them what they need, right? That's where the mindset
Henry
I come
Ford.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't know what they want, they are confused. Give them five products, like, and that's how the car companies do it, right? They don't
Right.
say, hey, what do you want to build in your dream car? They say, hey, I have these four models, BMW X, this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, what do you need? And then they give them little bit of insight updates, right?
Hmm.
I think that's how we should take an approach as a modular builders and an ecosystem. Let's productize ourselves, and let's like simplify our offerings, right? Let's not be everything for everyone, right? And I think this will help us gain market share faster.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, we figure out how we want to eat and go after the bigger market segment where we are everything for everyone. But I think as of today, um, if we basically really self-reflect, right?
Yeah.
I think self-reflection is that uh, uh, focus on few products and bring those products to the market, and really help solve those problems in the marketplace. I give you one example is like when we talk about rural communities or Arctic Canada or even Alaska, right? I think those markets are so ready for disruption, because if you give them three models, which just consumes 50% less energy, and the windows and everything has less leakages and everything, it will just sell because the energy bills are crazy up there. So,
Right.
so I think productizing it around certain markets and certain problems, I genuinely, that's what we at Workspace are looking at, that like productizing ourselves more instead of taking this approach of saying, what do you want to offer? Right. So talking about like, productization, Ryan, that like I personally believe that like instead of taking an approach that what people want and going to a client and say, what can I give it to you? I think the approach should be that you take car manufacturer's approach. So you have five models you offer, right? And this, and you offer a little bit of a customization, but you don't flip the whole floor plan on it, right?
Hmm.
And that's how, so productizing your offerings and then taking those products to market, right? I think that should be the approach that modular industry should take instead of being everything for everyone. Uh, I think that's where the opportunity, especially because when we talk about scale, when we talk about cash flow, that's the way to solve cash flow problems. That's
Hmm.
the way to solve the scalability problems, because your factory cannot just spit out 100 different variations. It just
Right.
cannot, right? So I think that's also being realistic. Industry has to be realistic, right? That they don't want to go to a feast and famine cycle. If they want to have a consistent cash flow, then bring consistent offerings, right? And imagine like, car companies doing that, like, they're building a different car for everyone. It just, they cannot build factories around it, right? So
Right.
I think that's where our way of looking at it to solve a scalability problem and to go after a bigger market segment, especially housing, just
Right.
focusing on housing side too. Uh, every market needs certain R values, certain architectural engineering requirements. So build three, four, five products, and that's how big builders operate today, right? If we
Right.
go to big builders in any subdivision, they don't tell you, hey, unless it's a custom builder, but most spec builders, they have five models. That's what they keep building it. And I think that's how the modular industry has to really think. I know they're doing it to an extent, but we often fall into the trap that because to do the cash flow going, right?
Hmm.
People become journalists. When you become journalist, you cannot scale because your assembly line cannot spit out the same product after one another.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, y- y- the getting into that productization, like you said, I mean, it's just designers love to have their fingerprint on things, and there is a need for that. There are solutions. You can still do prefab with a hybrid approach with on-site labor to build, unique designs that are one-time design.
Yeah.
And as you're saying, but that's not solving,
Yeah.
the housing shortage. That's not solving, the affordability crisis. That's not solving a lot of these problems that you've been discussing. There is a opportunity that different factories are going to run slightly different. Some are going to offer their five things, like you said, from a housing. I was thinking about the builders the first time I went and looked at a site down in North Carolina outside of Charlotte. And yeah, it was pick a model. I got to choose a few things if I wanted to, if I would have had that house built. But if I wanted the, uniqueness, then it was custom or I needed to go find it in the supply chain. So I do think that, we, we tend to, it's all or nothing. And I think a lot of times there's been some mismessaging from prefabrication companies over the years that have cost people, heartburn and struggle and real money and other things that has stuck with them. So they're hesitant in that area. But by pulling back and being curious of like, hey, you can use panelized, like you said. There are kit apart solutions. There are modular things that go inside, healthcare systems that the rest of the building is still, not totally
Yes.
100% prefab. So
Yeah.
the idea is hybrid approaches, finding those partners, addressing your delivery model, your process, your thinking around these solutions that are available from a prefab side. But you're addressing a lot with the modular side to get into some very critical infrastructure pieces like housing and like you said the schools and the healthcare area. So my last question, Ali, then before we wrap up is just you're a visionary from your view. You're looking out and you said, hey, if as an industry and as a world and a planet we're successful, what does that look like to you?
Excellent, right? I think if we all and look beyond our own personal interest, we can solve a lot of problems, right? Uh, I think if we look beyond our own egos and personal interests, so I think my motto is that, Ryan, whatever, however we came into this world, just leave it in a better shape, form, and do
Hmm.
whatever in your capacity you can, right? At the same time, I think I find a lot of joy in creating opportunities and employment, right? When you have a business which employs 100 people, you are directly, indirectly contributing to 100 families' income. So I think that's a great motivation. So I think
Hmm.
uh, create solutions out there which provide better infrastructure and better, opportunities. So I think if we just provide better infrastructure that creates more opportunities for the kids, for the families, for the communities. And I think that's kind of my long-term vision, is that, be a small contributor to this, big opportunity out there. Because if you can create better communities, this will turn, excellent creators, like scientists, people, engineers out
Hmm.
there. Because if the kids get the right environment and the right infrastructure, and especially living in Canada, Northern Canada has a huge problem with housing, right? A
Right.
huge problem. Indigenous housing is really in bad shape. That impacts a lot of problems. That impacts families, mental health issues, right? So I think that's what motivates me, and that's
Hmm.
I really want to, contribute there, and create more opportunities in terms of money, and in terms of employment for other people, right?
Yeah.
Uh, because I always will say that, what you earn in this world, you leave it here. So might as well earn it and put it to good work,
Yeah.
and then leave it in a better place, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I think again, it goes back to I always say this when somebody says what success look like, every individual ties it back to impacting other humans' lives. And that keeps me passionate about doing what I'm doing. And I know that does for you. Like, otherwise, what's the purpose, right? Like, what is the purpose if what we are trying to solve isn't making a community safer, a community better, giving them more opportunity to be what they want, to do what they want, and live with all the basic necessities we want as humans. So I appreciate you spending some time with me. So someone's listening, Ollie, they're out there, they've gotten their curiosity sparked a little more. What are some action steps and things that you think that individual should be taking on or looking at that might be able to help them engage a little more on relearning?
I think I always believe that there's so much content out there, right? Free content out there, YouTube, Netflix, podcasts, right? Podcasts like these, right? Like instead of consuming, we doom scrolling and consuming
Hmm.
mindless content. I think if we put 15-20 minutes into learning and sparking curiosity. It doesn't matter what kind of content you consume, but you learn something every day. I think it can be very impactful in their personal and professional lives.
Hmm.
So that's who I would say that, because see, in going back 30 years ago, we got newspaper and radio, and TV had 5 channels.
Right.
Today, you have so many choices. So I think learning becomes easy. You want to
Right.
learn something, you're motivated, you have an intent. YouTube or podcast or online AI, chat GPT, right? Even like it's a great learning tool, right? So I think,
Hmm.
but taking out some time and dedicating towards your personal development is important, even as leaders as well, right?
Hmm.
Okay, because if you don't spend time towards your own personal development, read, listen, right? Talk to people, be curious, right? And I always believe that if anything you're curious about, reach out to people in that industry. A
Yeah.
lot of people would love to talk to you, right? A lot of people would love to help you. A lot of us don't ask. Asking never hurts, right?
Right.
And it's okay to be shameless in your ask. It's okay, right? What's worse gonna you're gonna get? No, right? But it doesn't hurt to ask and say, you know what, I'm curious. Can you help me understand this process better, this system better, this industry better? How can I get started in this industry? That's how I spoke to a lot of people, right? I knew a few people who were in this industry, and I learned, I relearned, I listened to them, what they were saying. And it just came all together, and that's how Workspace came together. So Workspace Modular, they can check us out there, or LinkedIn. If they search my name, Ali Salman, reach out. I'll be happy to have a conversation. And whatever domains, I'm sure I can take out 15-20 minutes over a coffee and have a
Hmm.
conversation. But I think be curious and always keep spending little bit of time, even 5 minutes a day, towards your personal development. It compounds and it helps you become a better human being and better family person, and basically overall across all professional and personal fronts. Basically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think, yeah, if you make the first choice to take back some control, and that starts, like you said, 5 minutes at a time. Just there is a lot of content, and it can feel like there's a tremendous amount of choices and also no choice. So, like as a
Yeah.
human, just go into the exploration area, speak with gentlemen like Ali and others that are out there. Don't look for the silver bullet, but stay curious, stay focused on educating yourself and developing. So, Ali, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. I look forward to kind of seeing where things go for you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Really enjoyed the conversation, and thank you to your listeners. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, that is the episode with Ali Salman, who is the founding partner of Workspace Modular. I wanted to bring him on because I think it's fascinating that he did not come from the AEC industry, and he can look at it from a different perspective, where he's saying like, hey, I don't want to oversell. I don't want to be the answer to all things. I just want to address a lot of these areas of infrastructure that we struggle with in North America. So he sees a lot of the same challenges that we have. There is a labor force that can't meet demand to create enough supply in the housing market. There is a labor force that can't meet the demand and the process that it takes to build healthcare, and to take care of building facilities for education, which is our future investment. So I think, the way he is approaching it and talking about it has some uniqueness to it. And different than a lot of other companies and things that I've seen out into the marketplace who the messaging seems to be more of it's like a silver bullet. It's the only answer there is. It's all of these things that end up creating in our own minds that this is disruptive and I don't want to take this on because it's going to cost me more time. It sounds risky when the reality is like you can make the choice to take some time, educate yourself on what all the different layers of prefabrication are available and all of those areas that you can really start to address your projects differently as a designer, as a builder. And with the future workforce that's going to be coming, they may want to be building differently. So there's huge opportunity for us to relearn, to understand status quo doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that it was probably better at a certain situation. And now that those have changed, we should be reevaluating it more constantly and not seeing it as something that we did wrong or something that we're going to lose control of. So, hope you enjoyed the episode with Ali. And I hope that you're able to continue to focus on those things that you see for yourself that, hey, that is a problem I really would like to get involved in trying to solve. So until next time, continue to activate your curiosity and activate it within others.
The Activating Curiosity podcast is brought to you by Connective Consulting Group and Connective Coaching, part of the Curiosity Building Experiences. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a conversation. Share the podcast with your network and help us bring more curiosity into the construction industry. Interested in becoming a guest or a sponsor? Visit us at activatingcuriosity.buzzsprout.com for more details. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity.